Do I have your attention? 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 Do I have your attention?
Is you taking notes?
Okay, you guys, so the first thing you're going to want to do is get yourself a nice sized pot, and you're going to put 8 cups of water. Now, if you don't want to do this step, you can just use the box chicken broth. But to me, this better than bouillon. I'm telling you, this stuff is incredible, and I use it only around Thanksgiving time. So what you're going to do is you're going to do 4 tablespoons of the better than bouillon, a nice 4 heaping tablespoons, and then that's it. You're not going to put any other type of seasonings in your water because you don't want to oversalt your dressing. Trust me, you don't want that to happen. So that was 8 cups of water and 4 tablespoons of the better than bouillon. Just going to mix it up just so that it dissolves in the water. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get yourself your smoked turkey necks. Now, as you guys can see, I was able to find really large ones. So luckily, I only had to use 3, and that was more than enough. If for some reason you can only find small ones, make it like 4 or 5. That way you'll be able to extract enough meat from the bones. You'll put the lid on it for 2 hours, and at the 2-hour mark, everything will be completely tender, just the way you want it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to shred the meat off of the bones once it cools down. You're going to reserve this chicken broth because you're going to be using that later on. There's a lot of good seasoning in that, so do not throw that away. Do not. Just turn the heat off and set it to the side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to work on getting our celery, our onions, and our andouille sausage taken care of. So right now I've just added in roughly about 3 tablespoons of butter. And now we're adding in 5 stalks of celery that's been minced and 1 sweet onion. Now, if you're a person that loves a lot of onions, feel free to add more onions. Or if you don't like as many onions, you know, the same thing for the celery. You can adjust all of this as much as you would like. This is just what I do. This is going to be a pretty large dressing, so that's why I use as much as I do. Right now, we're only going to add black pepper and a tiny pinch of salt. Don't go too crazy because, once again, that chicken broth does have a lot of salt in it, and we're going to be adding some later on. So once this starts to get a bit translucent, then what we're going to do is we're going to go on ahead and add in our andouille sausage. Now, for the andouille sausage, you know how it comes in the pack and it looks like a U? I use just a half of it. I do not use the whole thing. You can use the whole thing, but to me, I just think that's way too much. And I just put it in small little dices. And I add it directly in with my celery and my onion. If it does seem like your pan is getting a bit dry, add in about 1 to 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And then as you'll see, everything will kind of start to fry up. And then you're just going to turn the heat off and sit this to the side. That's it. You don't have to do anything else to that at all. So get whatever your baking dish is. And then remember how I was telling you guys how for my cornbread dressing, I use the exact same cornbread that I use when I make my buttermilk cornbread. The only difference is I don't use as much sugar. So all you guys have to do is click on the link up above. I'm going to put it up right here, right now. And I'll also put it down in the description box below. So if you guys want to know how to make my cornbread, just follow that recipe the exact same way, except the only difference is that you're going to use 2 tablespoons of sugar instead of 1 full cup. You don't want this cornbread dressing to be sweet, so you want to reduce way more than half of the amount of sugar. So just keep that in mind. Now, if I were you, I would prepare your cornbread the day before, because honestly, the staler it is and the hotter it is, the better off you'll be. And also, it will get cool enough so that you can crumble it down like I'm doing. Now, I also like to use these Filler Pepperidge Farm, the Cornbread Classic stuffing, but I honestly only use about 1.5 cups. That's it. Because my cornbread makes a pretty large cornbread, and so you kind of really don't need a lot of this. But I use it just to have a little bit of extra filler, because I don't want to make 2 full-blown, whole cornbreads. So that's why, I use this. Now, If you don't want to make your own homemade cornbread or buttermilk cornbread, if you want to just buy the Jiffy Lube, I said the Jiffy Lube, Lord Jesus. If you want to buy the Jiffy stuff, that's completely fine. You can. And if you don't want to do that and you want to just use all of the bag stuff, you can absolutely do that as well. So now we're going to go on ahead and add in our celery, our onions, and of course our andouille sausage. Now, one thing about the andouille sausage, I don't always put andouille sausage in mine. It kind of just depends on how I feel. And also, if you know there are a lot of people in your family that don't eat pork, then I would say just leave it out. You know what I mean? Just don't put it in. Every now and again, I'll put it in. Sometimes I use chorizo. Sometimes I use andouille sausage. Sometimes I don't use any of it at all. And so now we're also going to be adding in all of that beautiful meat shredded off of the smoked turkey necks. You guys, look at how much meat we were able to get off of that. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And so to me, this is what makes the biggest difference between stuffing and dressing. To me, dressing is a side dish that has other things mixed into it. Some people use chicken, some people use shredded turkey, some people add other meats to it like I have going on here. To me, this is considered a dressing. I would never call this a stuffing. So now what you're going to do is, now this is going to depend on how much you're making. So I suggest start off with 2 cups of that reserved chicken broth. So that chicken broth that you cook those smoked turkey necks in, now all of that's going to come in handy. So what you want to do is start off with just 2 cups. Then get your hands in there. I'm telling you, this is one of those type of things where you need to just make sure your hands are nicely cleaned, and you need to get your hands in there so that you can feel it. If the texture of it is too dry, which of course 2 cups would never be enough anyway for this much, because if you think about it, you have dry bread in there that you just put in from the bag. You also have a cornbread that you either let sit out for a long time, or you overcook so that it would kind of dry out some. So you're going to want to make sure that you're using enough chicken stock so that way it'll be nice and loose. You don't want it to be soupy. There's a big difference. You want the texture to almost slightly feel like kind of like oatmeal. It's kind of the feel of what you're going for. So the seasonings that I've just added in just now was a half a teaspoon of ground sage, a half a tablespoon of seasonal salt, and a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. So those were the seasonings that you just saw me add in there. Now, that's the reason why I was saying, earlier to make sure that you weren't going crazy with adding in too much salt, because between the pork, the smoked turkey necks, the chicken broth, you're already going to have more than enough seasonings as well. So once again, just to make sure that I said all of them, you have 1 teaspoon of thyme leaves, a half a teaspoon of ground sage, a half a tablespoon of seasonal salt, and a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. So that's all of the seasonings that just went in there. So once it starts to feel like you're getting it to the proper texture, then that's when, you can stop putting in the chicken broth. So I ended up using a little over 4.5 cups. I didn't go fully to 6. I used a little over 4.5. And as you can see now, it's taking on the texture of oatmeal, and that's exactly what I want. So go on ahead and have your oven preheated at 350 degrees. And you guys, you're going to cook this in the oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, T.Y., you've missed an ingredient. No, I haven't. I don't put eggs in mine. I don't think it's necessary. I think if you cook it in the oven properly, if you put just the right amount of liquid, to me, I don't think you need eggs. If you want to be on the safe side, by all means, add eggs, but mine comes out perfect every single time. So like I said, pop that in the oven at 350 degrees for about 45 minutes. Now, the one thing you didn't see me do was I put about 4 tablespoons of butter on it, melted butter, before I popped it in the oven. And you guys, as you can see, it turns out beautifully. The top has a beautiful crust to it, but the inside, let me tell y'all something. The inside is so incredibly soft. And that's one of the most amazing things about the stuffing. Like, it just look at how incredibly soft it is so you see how it has the beautiful brown edges, but then the inside is nice and soft. So it didn't dry out. It didn't lose its texture. Look, y'all better try this out, honey. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. And as always, y'all babies know I love y'all so much. Y'all stay cute and take care. Now go on ahead and try this recipe, honey. Try out something new. I promise you, your family will absolutely love it.
Simply Food by TY.